I am Vickie Perez-Segovia.
And I'm Jessica Bishop.
And you're listening to Through Dangers Untold, a monthly art podcast about traversing the precarious gap between art school and a professional, sustainable art career. And what is everyone working on this week? Vickie?
This week I am actually prepping some postcards that I'm going to be giving out at the ISG Art Harvest, and that is going to be at House at Columbia College Chicago. For anyone that's in Chicago, you can go to 623 South Wabash this weekend, Friday and Saturday, 16th, 17th. There's going to be a little mini art festival for students and alums from Columbia's illustration department. Are selling my stuff and promoting my Patreon, which you should support. Patreon.com/Vicstopher.
Nice.
Yay. So this week I'm working on paintings because that's what I'm always doing. And also preparing some prints to display next month at Ghost Gallery in Seattle's holiday show.
Oh, cool.
Ooh.
Yay. It's a mini show. So everything that's going to be there is, including like the frame or display, is less than 10 by 10 inches.
Oh,
Awesome.
nice.
So, and it'll all be kind of like in the more affordable range because of that. So it's a good gift place if you're in Seattle.
Nice.
Sonnett, what are you doing?
I am painting, somewhat painting. It's been a very, very busy autumn as I have taken on some other work. But yeah, I've mostly been painting and practicing and applying for conventions. So a lot of that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, all right. So we have a pretty saucy topic tonight. We are talking about nudity in art. And yeah. Let's talk.
Well, this is one of those hard ones. So when we were talking about this, or talking about broaching the topic, I think for me, one of the biggest questions was kind of, is it possible for us as women artists to create art of nude women and still be feminist? And I mean, I think the answer is, of course, yes, but how do we do that? Like, how do we make art that is not sexual?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or even, I mean, and also, what about the question, can it be sexual and still be feminist art, too?
Yes. And where is the line there?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I prefer drawing, like the nude form. I just find it more interesting. I like the techniques that go into painting skin more than painting fabric, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's this weird sense every time I do it, and I'm working on one now, I've decided, that's mostly nude.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting here and I'm painting a breast and I'm like, this should be okay, but why does it still feel weird for me to put this out there? Like, it's this weird internal fear that someone else is going to sexualize something that I'm not meant to portray as sexual.
Yeah.
Right? To me, it's just the form, but I'm so scared of it coming across as something that's not what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I do that? Or how do I make something, like you said, how do I make something that can be sexy, but doesn't cross any boundaries for what could be feminist and not feminist?
I think in general, it's one of those problems of like, we can't control how people respond to what we make.
Mm-hmm.
And we as individual artists, it is a lot of work to take on to like dismantle the way society realizes female bodies.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point.
So like as individuals, it's like there's not like a ton we can do. It's one of those things where it's kind of like bricklaying. It's like you do one thing at a time, but that's where, you know, it requires social thought to change and the perspective to change over how we look at female bodies, because there is a lot of work that people make that isn't meant to be sexualized, and like it's not even necessarily nude.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like an image will be sexualized just because it's female or assumed to be female.
Right. Right. Like, yeah, I think you can see plenty of examples of things. I mean, just doing a search online for any image for reference for art, I mean, you see that this totally random thing has been taken and sexualized by someone. So, yeah, I don't think that's something you can control.
It's like whenever I, you know, go on like Tumblr or Pinterest just to find some like easy kind of like art references or just like even like art tutorial posts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, even just like a Google image search, the amount of like tutorials that people have made of like how to draw boobs.
Yep.
Well,
One, sure, yeah, it is important because there are people that draw them terribly. Refuse to learn how breasts work.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it seemed like there was a thing where like a lot of artists who were probably already making very hypersexualized male characters were kind of using it as an excuse to just draw boobs more and just only boobs.
Right.
It's like that's not creative or impressive or anything. You're just doing whatever it is that you're doing. And it's like explain that kind of behavior other than like a little kid just do something weird and you're just like looking at them and you're just like, all right, well, you just did that thing. And it's just like it's different when it's a child because yeah, kids are learning, they do weird things, but it's like when it's an adult should have a general concept of like where we are socially, where art is socially, someone who considers themselves a professional artist.
Right.
And
is just like, lol, boobs.
I think it gets complicated there because, like, I personally think that, like, art and what people make should be a safe place for them to express themselves, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
I'd rather have someone draw something that's completely inappropriate than them actually doing it, if that makes sense. And, like, so I don't want there to ever be some sort of like art police, right? Like
Yeah.
it's your own art and you can make what you want, but at the same time it's difficult, right? Like
It is. It is, if you don't mind.
I'm trying to think of how to word this.
Well, do you mind if I step in? Or do you
Go
want
ahead.
to finish your thought?
No, go ahead.
I, because I grew up in a very conservative area where there were very strict rules about nudity and modesty and about pornography and all of that. Like, I have a very... I hear what you're saying, Jess, and I hear what you're saying too, Vickie. Because... I feel totally split down the middle in the sense that on one hand, I think it's important for people to be able to express their sexual fantasies And I think it's important for people to be able to talk about sex and even do that in art and be able to express themselves in that way. I don't like the idea of prescripting that because of the way I grew up. I found that to be very detrimental to people, not everyone, but to a lot of people. And so I don't know if that's necessarily the answer. On the other hand, I also understand that we don't even know what the world looks like. Like, we don't even know what art would look like from the perspective of women and non-binary sexuality. Because everything we've been given has come from male fantasy. So we don't even know what that landscape looks like. So I think that because it gets all filtered through this very dominating idea of what sex is supposed to look like, that it ends up subjugating what could be very creative and beautiful, but we wouldn't even know what it looks like. Anyway, go.
Yeah.
That's my rant. That's my soapbox.
That's a great point.
Yeah. And to kind of like bounce off of that, like there's kind of like what you were saying, it's like so much of art that we see in its many forms, whether it's fine art or commercial art, is through that lens, through that like male lens.
Yep.
Even work that's created by non-binary or are ever going to be kind of like a pure version of that vision, because it's always going to be as an answer,
right? Exactly.
through that male lens,
right?
And it's always going to be considered that, even if it's not,
right?
Like, even if these other artists make the art for themselves just because that's what makes them happy,
right?
There is a slippery slope I can go down right now, but in terms of the response. But before I get myself angry, I'm not going to.
It's understandable.
Yeah, and like I think to kind of circle back to the original topic, absolutely be able to, it's like make nude art that doesn't have the purpose of like sexualizing the subject, as well as it, especially for female and non-binary artists, maybe even, I guess, that's the right way to put this, I guess, what's perceived as female-bodied artists, art that is an exploration of themselves, a sort of like dissection of like their experience, yes. Or even it is a like celebration of their body and their sexuality, and artists who do make that kind of work should be able to feel safe, feel empowered, and own their sexuality without being subjugated to by that other side, But
right,
it's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, it's gonna happen though.
Right.
And that's what becomes frustrating, because it's like you see someone feeling good about themselves, doing a great thing, along comes, some person, and as we all know, it's never like, it's always kind of like, the one loudest person who's
right,
maybe responding in a way that can potentially harmfully impact the creator.
Right.
And it's like, it's not fair.
Yeah, no.
It hurts to have something that you made, like, taken away in that kind of sense. Like, you make something and it means one thing to you, and it's, in a sense, perverted by someone else.
Right.
You know, whether you're an artist or an author or anything. And even, I guess, beyond sexuality, people can change ideas about things.
Yes.
You know, what something means, what something doesn't mean.
Right.
But I think another question I have on the topic, unless you guys have anything else to say right now.
No.
Okay. Something for me that I always wonder about is I see a lot of women artists that create hypersexualized art of other women. That's very obviously this is where I think it gets a little dicey, because I want to say that it's very obviously from a male gaze standpoint, even though it's created by someone who's woman identifying.
Right.
And obviously it's not, because it is and it isn't, because it's coming from a woman. But they're making something that is almost maybe anti-woman, or is it pro-woman because they made it?
Right.
I think it.
No.
Everybody has thoughts. Were you finished, Tess, first?
Or whoever was gonna go.
You can go, Vickie.
Okay. Sorry to pounce.
No, it's fine.
Oh, I think this relates to the idea of artists who come from marginalized backgrounds. I mean, as people, the way people from marginalized backgrounds do, needing to assimilate to what is in the mainstream to feel like this is what they have to do to succeed. An artist that I spoke to at a local convention, I won't name the convention or the artist or who they currently work for, artist, who got their start, like, their work is fantastic. If you can't tell by the conversation that we're having, they are not a male artist. I remember them mentioning that the way they had their table set up, they had their portfolio open to the more kind of like sexualized, like pinups characters. Just because they had been taught, the idea that like sex sells, and they're like, if you want to get people to your table, this is what you got to have open to your table, and to look through the rest of your art, so you can get money. And it's a notion that's taught, I think, probably to like commercial fields, I would assume, or that had been taught maybe a decade ago, maybe 15 years ago, that I think, just dynamics of like how people are making money and how people are selling art is kind of like not as maybe like the way people sell their work. I feel like I'm getting vaguer and vaguer and more confusing.
No,
Okay.
It definitely has changed. I think that's true. Yeah.
But yeah, and that sort of like resonated with me. Like hearing about that, especially like growing up as like, and like a preteen in like the 90s and the late 90s and early 2000s, that idea of like sex sells, etc., etc. It sounds very now, but like it was a legitimate thing commercially.
Yeah.
I feel like it still is.
Yeah.
I think people are still definitely taught that sex sells, no matter what industry they're in.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Oh yeah, for sure. I may feel like it's faded just because it's symptomatic of kind of like having the veil removed and being like, oh wait, that's a bunch of BS.
Yeah.
Like
totally.
Like, oh wait, that's fake.
Yep.
But like this artist is now an artist for a major comics publication. You know, part of me always wonders, you know, it's like how much of that has to do with this artist's like true skill, because they are a fantastic artist, like a mind-blowing artist.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like how much of it was any of like their kind of steps in their career. Was it like, oh, well, you're a great artist, but also you can draw women really hot.
Yeah.
To draw our characters, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that was honestly probably part of it. Like, if you're really good and you're drawing what they want to be drawn,
you're gonna get work.
I mean, you already have done half the work for them.
Yeah.
They already know that you can deliver.
Right.
And then at that point, you have to kind of decide for yourself, am I okay doing this?
Right.
Yep.
And like it's hard because like I would never, like, that artist, like, I don't blame them for any of that.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
Like,
That
to me,
is-
I'm like, well, that makes sense.
I completely agree. It's like if I were in that situation, I doubt that I would go about it any differently. Like, even though I'm literally currently actively taking steps to avoid situations like that, it's like if that opportunity came,
Yeah.
hey, you can draw women hot, we'll give you this money, and be like, hey, I need money.
Oh,
You know?
it would be
It's
a really hard
hard.
choice. Yeah.
And like, drawing hot people is fun.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest.
I mean, yes, absolutely. I would never argue against that. But there is definitely kind of like that idea of just like, hey, I mean, this could be me literally just getting too hypothetical about it, but the idea of just kind of like, okay, you're getting this far in the game, you know, and it's like, when will I ever be able to kind of like do stuff the way I want? Or two, it's like almost like dreading that potential project where it's like you're gonna have to draw something like you're really not into,
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
figuring out whether or not you want to compromise that, like what you guys were saying. It's like it's up to you to decide, you know. It's like what your comfort level is, and it's also like once you're in it, it's like how much are you risking when you say no to those things.
Yeah. Yep.
I came across this in my own personal work the other day, where I wanted to do this painting, kind of based on some folklore, but it would have involved drawing like a scarier older woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I started doing it, and I was like, you know, it's not that I know that my skills, I could do it, right? But then I started doing it, and I'm like, but no one will like this because it's not pretty.
Oh, wow.
And then it made me stop, and it's like I'm just thinking about that now, and I'm like, this is more relevant than I thought it was at the time.
Mhm.
But it's just kind of this weird feeling. I'm like, I want to draw this, and I think it would be fun, and I think it would be like cool, right? But
Mhm.
cool doesn't sell. You
Ugh.
know, well, it can, but like
But
again,
it's considerably harder than sex.
like no one wants
Yes.
a painting of an ugly woman on their wall.
That's not true. That's not true. And I think you would have to find the right market for it. It may just be a harder market to find than the standard pretty woman, you know?
So this also just reminded me of something that I've been thinking about, and I also spent the last minute and a half debating whether or not I wanted to bring it up on the podcast because I don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah. Tell us.
Okay, so inside scoop for our listeners.
Ooh.
Those of you that aren't aware, I have a Patreon, and I'm using my Patreon to sort of build my, as I say in my like epic story comic
Ooh,
from
cool.
like a huge, futuristic fantasy world where there's a lot of world building involved, a lot of character building and everything.
Cool.
And I was having a conversation with just like some online, debating whether or not I wanted to create kind of like supplementary content to that like exists in the world, but essentially it would like, I guess, like kind of like pornographic / erotica. One, because it's stuff that like I've written before when I was like early in college and like discovering the internet, and the deep dark world of fan fiction.
Oh boy.
Like as creative writing exercises go, it's like I always had fun with that, and I was like, okay, well, I have my own content. Do I want to create that type of content?
Yeah.
This world that I'm building, partly because I know I might actually make money off of it compared to the
Are you talking about releasing your writing or erotic drawings?
I mean, it could be both.
Okay, I was like literally just wondering. I was like, I didn't know which one you were talking about.
Yeah, I would probably lean more towards writing, just because, as per our previous conversation, writing is easier and faster. For me personally, as a creative, like I can get drafts out really fast, and especially when it comes to like, I guess like writing porn and erotica, it's like it's kind of like that sort of like sloppy, fun, creative activity where like you don't have to worry about that much.
Right.
How you refine it.
Right.
Just because like there's like so many different flavors to it. But it's also like there's a lot of logistical stuff behind that, but releasing that type of content.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to like what platform you're deciding to release it on.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, because terms of services are a thing.
Oh yeah. You're like,
yeah, I know a lot of independent porn producers got shut down on Patreon at one point.
Oh wow.
Right. I had that conversation with like some other folks who have like known other people that maybe like publish like fan fiction or like pornographic comics or something, and they're like, yeah, they get shut down from Patreon. It's not necessarily that it violates Patreon's terms of services, but I think like PayPal's terms of services, because because they use for like the
that is so complicated.
Complicated, and it's like one of those things where it's like a very, very fine line where it's like you have to really, really know what you're doing, and sometimes it's safer just to go on a completely different platform that's dedicated just to that.
Yeah.
Right, because who knows how they're going to draw the line, right?
Right. And like that's kind of like why I'd been debating it for so long, because I'm like, it's something that I could do that I think I would be doing, and could help me with the income for that story and building that story. And it'll, if I can make an income off of sexy stories from the same world, maybe that will help me build the rest of the world that's, a bit more serious. It's really hard to kind of like find a balance, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it's fun for you and it's something you like doing, then go for it.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess I'm wondering what your, like, do you have another hang up about it besides the legality on the platform? Like,
not really.
Then
it's more just, part of me, I think, is just that, like, I'm scared and nervous about, like, doing the research about the legality, and I'm just nervous about getting confused by it.
Oh, yeah. I would.
Well, I definitely can't help you with that.
Yeah, we're like,
right?
It's like... legal.
Hi, guys.
When it comes to stuff like that, I think it's great that women identifying people want to make erotic things.
Yeah.
Because like we've been talking about, it's so much male dominated.
Yep.
Right? Like, we always see things through that lens, and maybe things like imagine if the world had more mainstream erotic entertainment that was made by women.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Things could be very, like, looked at very differently.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would be really interesting to see what happened. I mean, I think there's a lot of... it's really super, super, super complicated. I mean, I've done a lot of research and reading into a lot of these things, and unfortunately it seems that even women-led projects that do pornography still can be exploitive of the women who work in them. It's complicated. Not always, but unfortunately it still seems to be pretty prevalent.
And
yeah,
so
go ahead.
That point that you just made, I wonder if that again has to do, with the fact that, like, a lot of these kind of, I guess, quote unquote business models are designed by men, and it's just like, it's already out there and it's designed to exploit women.
Yeah.
You're behind or in front of the camera.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think it's systemic, for sure.
And another point, like you mentioned earlier, Vickie, that sometimes women will do things to try to assimilate with a culture.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's another big part of it. Sometimes we try to act masculine in whichever form that takes to fit in.
Well, and I also think there are women that honestly enjoy drawing pinups and drawing cheesecake and drawing, that kind of art, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly don't even, this is the weird thing, and it always feels super uncomfortable in myself, and I have a hard time with, is that I honestly don't even have a problem with guys doing that. Like, fine. But the part I have a problem with is that that's all we have. That's part of the system. It's part of the problem. In a perfect world, if we were all treated equally and we were treated with respect and not exploited, and didn't have headless, naked female torsos selling, razors, then it would be fine.
Right.
So it's this complicated thing, because I'm like, whatever, it's fantasy, okay, but on the other hand, but it's also not fantasy. It's this headless female torso that's not even a person that we see in our subways, like,
yeah.
Is this something specific?
No, it's everywhere. Seriously, if you start looking, like, just start at paying attention to billboards and to advertisements on the subway and commercials, and start to recognize that the headless female torso is everywhere. Just start
I
to
feel
look
like
for it.
there was like a blog post about
Decapitated,
that.
or they just cropped?
They just crop.
Oh,
And then
it's
Okay.
think
Yeah.
about what that means. You've got all the sexual
you're right.
organs, right? That's all you've got. Sexual organs, no personality, no humanity. Like, that is the message.
I feel like someone made a blog post about that somewhere on it. Not necessarily about billboards, but about like movie posters.
Yep.
They just had this long list of just like movie posters from every genre.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like headless women.
Yep. Yep. It's really prevalent in advertising. It's insidious.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like people don't even realize or stop to think how unnecessary that imagery is.
I know. It's like wallpaper. And it basically sums up everything this whole country feels about women. Right there.
No, you're right. And I think that's why like conversations like this are important.
Yeah.
You know, because I think that's a big concern, at least with me, is I don't want to stop thinking about what would make my art feminist or not feminist, because then I don't want to fall into a trap of all of a sudden it's not what I want it to be.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to be unwillingly propagating a culture I don't like.
Yeah.
And I think that's the scariest part, because inherently, like, and it's so awful, because I know there's nothing wrong with a sexual body, man or woman's, but at the same time, like, I don't want to draw it and share it because I don't like the message, and it's kind of this weird circle.
Yeah.
Of where you want it to be okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, you know it's not, because of the culture, and it just never stops. Little wheel.
Yeah. Yep. I definitely feel that.
For me, it's probably just because I've worked in schools. I've worked with like kids and stuff. I think pretty regularly about the whole idea of just like, oh, you know, like what's being presented to children, you know, in our mainstream. Yeah. And like not necessarily like oh no, think of the children, we can't, you know, have anything sexual existing in the world ever, they can't know what that is. But more in the sense of like, how are we presenting these things, and how are they relating to those things, because that again, it's how we grew up, you know. It's like,
right,
I grew up with very protective parents, but it's like that didn't mean that I wasn't going to see billboards outside. It didn't mean that I wasn't going to see the way women are photoshopped in magazines as a kid.
Right.
And that wasn't just going to exist in my brain, you know?
I agree. I think it does cause problems. Like, I mean, I've been kind of talking about this week with Sonnett and some other people, just talking about like looking back on the media that I consumed as a kid and what possible effects that had on me later. And a lot of it was very sexual.
Yes.
And like characters that I loved, and I didn't understand when I was a kid. Of course I didn't understand how sexualized they were.
Right.
And it's like, I remember specific moments where I didn't understand it, and I would be copying it, like drawing it. And I remember like my mom being so alarmed.
Yes.
And then, but me not understanding why she was alarmed.
Yep.
Right? So it's this, and how do you explain that to a child? And like, I do think it caused weird problems for me later in life.
Yeah, because it's like it's like this weird double-edged sword of just like, also kind of reminded me of like being a kid when I was in like 4th and 5th grade, and like I was getting really good at drawing, and I was like, ooh, I can like draw boobs on women, but it's like, I don't know if I should because I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for it.
Yep. Totally.
Like having that awareness of just like, oh, but the exposed female body is bad, but it's like, wait, but I'm also a female.
Yes.
It's like these things are in your head at the same time and you're trying to process them both, and you just, it's like all of that, like, what does it translate into? Into, you know, a very puritanical society that teaches women to just be ashamed.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Definitely. Yep.
And it's like, that's so harmful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so complicated. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we talked a little bit before when we were talking about this. When we were talking before we were talking. What are some of the solutions that seem to be happening? And we talked about some of the artists that are painting from their perspective and painting from their own experiences and their own feelings about sex and nudity and how that comes out in their work and lends a depth and a complicated perspective to the work that actually, I think, really enriches the work. I mean, I think that's one answer, is to dive into that.
Yeah, and just I remember the original point that I was going to make, and it sort of answers.
Yeah.
It sort of answers the question that you're asking right now. Is that as a creator, personally, when I'm making work, well, I have, you know, these characters that are being represented a certain way. I kind of do that sort of like mentality of, I guess, like mindfulness and like self-care that like goes around a lot online of like, oh, like be the person that like you needed. I'm trying to apply it as a creator of just like create the work that you needed to see.
Oh yeah.
And not even just like, oh, as a child growing up, but even like as a late teen, as like 18 through like 23 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Still so much of that was definitely influencing me, that I felt like, oh, you know, it's like, well, we mostly draw women like this because that's how I learned how to draw women, and it's like I don't really know how to draw other body types that aren't very sexualized, you know?
Right.
And it wasn't until like I got a little bit older, you know, the last like 5-6 years, where I was just like, no, I need to representation of those bodies, especially as someone who doesn't have a body that is represented in mainstream media.
Right.
You know, I'm just like, I need to represent myself.
Right.
And see themselves in the media regardless of how old they are.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's like one thing that I just try to be, I guess, cognizant about, is just like to see as, you know, artist. What do I still need to see? And it kind of goes back. I make the stuff that I wanted to see because I didn't see enough of it.
Yep.
I think that's like a really good thought to meditate on.
Yeah.
At least for me. Like,
it's really cool. I'm super inspired. Yeah.
I need
really
to go
good.
back and think about this. Because I always think about that in the sense of like, I want to be the person that I needed growing up. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that I can be there for other people or younger people.
Yeah.
But I've never put that towards my art.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely feel the same. I definitely try to strive to be a better person through my art. To try and make things...
It's really hard.
I definitely want to make things that are more inclusive. And Vickie, I struggle with the body thing a lot. Like, I have a really hard time with that. I don't know how to draw people that are more my size too. And yeah, it's really hard. I love what I'm seeing though. It's so inspiring seeing a lot of people working in that space and doing more body positive characters, and it just makes me so happy.
Yeah, and it's really cool seeing it evolve too.
Yeah.
And like seeing that people whose bodies are just different from what we've been taught is like the standard.
Yeah.
Seeing it celebrated, not used as a joke.
Yep.
That's so important.
So cool.
I like figure drawing class for that. I don't know about you guys, but I definitely had a wide range of models throughout the years.
Figure drawing was my shit.
Yeah, it was a good time for sure.
Yeah.
It's very zen.
Yes.
It is, and it teaches you about, God, fat displacement.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
how because everyone's, I mean, we all know this, everyone's body is different, and it really is.
Yep.
And it's even like, I'm trying to use my own body as reference sometimes, and just looking at how my fat works and how my body shape works, and trying, I don't know, because I have the same thing. I've always liked to draw like really skinny people, right? And people that just don't, and oftentimes it comes out to ending up being people that really just don't look real. You know?
Yeah.
And I actually think it improves people's art when they're trying to make a more realistic representation of what people look like.
Yeah.
And like that makes me think of, again, a more commercial illustration. Like, so I'm going to bring up like two different examples. Major studios where we've seen kind of like both sides, I think. So like one example, Blizzard. We've seen their Overwatch characters. They have a bajillion heroes, and they have a fantastic range of body types, except the women are shaped the same and have different accessories.
Right.
They're literally the
skin
same.
colors.
Yep. Except
and it's
for
just
like
like
2 women.
Yeah. Because one's controlling a robot horse.
Of course.
but it's like feels like that like Barbie thing again, you know, where it's like, oh, they're all shaped the same, you just make the hair and skin a different color and you give them different accessories. And then,
Right.
you know, and then you've got Mexican Barbie and African American Barbie.
Right.
And it's like what? And then I also think of like Disney animations growing up, a lot of the 2D animations, I would see more variety in female body types, but issue of just like, okay, there's characters of all types of really interesting shapes and body types, but any characters that don't have what's considered a standard is a secondary character.
Right.
They are not considered relatable because they're not ideal, which
Right.
is two conflicting ideas.
Yeah.
Sorry if the audio picked up me like banging on the desk right now.
Oh, no. I totally respect that. I was doing it earlier.
Then, they started coming out with, like, the 3D animated films, and there was a lot of controversy about the whole, like, in, like, Anna and Elsa and Frozen. It's like, that is the same friggin' model. It's like, okay, they're sisters, sure, but it's like, siblings look different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, the fact that, it's like, the models weren't terribly different from, other female, I guess rigs.
Mm-hmm.
I know nothing about 3D modeling, folks.
I think it's hard because, like with that, and kind of like what I said earlier, where Sonnett said I was wrong, and I probably am wrong.
Where did I say you were wrong?
When I said people don't want pictures of ugly women on their walls.
Oh, well, yeah, you're wrong anyway.
And I'm like, and I was thinking, I was like, well, I mean, reflecting back on my comment, I'm like, I guess that's kind of something that's been drilled into me.
Yeah.
From a male gaze standpoint. And I think that since a lot of these people, including at Disney, even though I love Frozen, just saying, but they think that little girls care. Like that Anna and Elsa are skinny.
Right.
And beautiful and perfect.
Ugh,
And
wow, that's so insidious. Whew.
And I'm like, I think they think that little girls care. And like, I'm trying to look back as a little girl. I honestly can't remember if I cared or not, but I don't think I did. I mean, I watched Arthur. Like Arthur, I could never figure out what he was supposed to be because he does not look like an aardvark. Arthur's an idealized aardvark. Okay, I'm gonna go on a tangent. So that was not a good example.
Oh my god.
But yeah, it's just.
Sorry, your aardvark comment got me. Okay.
Oh my god. But yeah, I'm like, it is insidious because now, little girls don't come out of the womb, or little boys for that matter, care coming out of the womb what other little people look like.
Mm-hmm.
They're trained to think that.
Yeah. All I cared about was it sparkly?
That was a big one for me.
Did it glitter? Okay, cool.
Yeah. As I like to remind people around me, in particular my husband and my manager at work, and I think I've just always had the same taste when it came to aesthetics. I like pointy things. If I saw a cool character, was one that had like spikes on it.
Nice.
That's all I needed to be satisfied in.
That's awesome.
It's like, is it pointy? Good. Okay.
Well, see,
that one's my favorite.
That's see, there you go. It's like, is it sparkly? Is it pointy?
Is it magic?
Exactly.
Ooh, is it sparkly pointy? Yes.
A unicorn. A unicorn
Ultimate.
is sparkly.
Dude, unicorns are awesome.
Forever.
Has a little antenna.
Yep.
She does. That was always so cool.
Yep.
Her little antenna would come out of her sparkly tiara.
Mm-hmm.
And make more sparkles. Aggressive sparkles.
Aggressive sparkles.
That's what lightning is.
Aggressive sparkles are great. Wow. We've learned many things today.
Wow.
We've been talking about Sailor Moon before the show. Now it's come up again. That one is another Barbie thing. And that one's really hard because it was made by a woman as well.
Oh, yeah. And you also have to take into account that, differences in culture too. But like...
Yes.
Yeah. To an extent, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
it's
because people in Japan don't look like that either.
There is a lot to be said of Western influences on global culture and global media.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And
Definitely a
they're
bigger
definitely
conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think I saw something
Yeah,
really cool about that recently, and I can't remember what it was. But
it
yeah,
is.
it talked
But
about,
the whole blonde hair tall girl.
yeah.
Um, but also like, you know, they had really short skirts and they were like 12.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you guys, okay, this is a totally side topic now that we've side topicked, but there's this really great website called the Anime Feminist or Feminist
check it out.
Anime. It's really excellent because if you're an anime fan like me, you realize pretty quickly that a lot of it's pretty problematic.
Yes.
Yep.
Sure is.
So they have a really great website with really great contributors, and it's a nice place to read about all those issues and kind of see the ones that are coming out each season that may be a little more feminist friendly. It's just fascinating.
That sounds awesome.
It's really good. I highly recommend it. But they have a really cool series where they talk about their problematic faves, which I thought was great.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah.
All my faves are problematic.
So many of ours are. Because we live in this world. But, yeah. Anyway, we are reaching near the end here. We have a few more minutes. Is there anything else we wanted to talk about with this topic?
5-second lightning round. Each of us answer this question.
Ooh.
Lady in your next drawing. For me, probably.
What
Sonnett?
is? Wait. What?
Will there be a naked lady in your next drawing?
Oh!
I'm working on one now.
That's a yes.
Working. No, currently, because I'm still painting this painting.
That is valid. All answers are valid.
I will be honest. Every
Correct.
single painting I do has a naked lady. I just put clothes on her.
Oh.
But I draw her naked. I
Just broke my mind.
Intense.
I'm sure there's a metaphor in there.
All right. Well, on that note, you have been listening to Through Dangers Untold. And our logo was created by Karen Hodo. You can find her online at kmhododesigns.com. And you can find me at sonnettshline.com. And I actually haven't been very active on social media lately because I've been working on these other projects, but I should be hopping back on there soon. And I am on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and Tumblr. And Jess, where can they find you?
You can find me at my website, which is jessicarubishop.com, which is just my name and initials, and also on Instagram and Twitter at jrubishop. Again, my initials and last name.
And Vickie?
And you can find me anywhere on the internet as Vixtifer. You can visit my website, vixtifer.com. And if you want to see some of that cool art I was talking about, it's not the pouring. I'm not doing that right now. Just an FYI. It's something I'm just thinking about. But if you're interested in seeing the regular art from that crazy world building I'm doing, you can go check out my Patreon at patreon.com/Vixtifer. You can just follow me on social media at Vixtifer on platforms like Instagram and Twitter and Facebook.
All right. And thank you for listening, and we will see you next month. Bye.
Bye.